Thanks for joining us here at History Cop, where we investigate the sometimes wonderful but sometimes terrible but never boring history of the city of Chicago. In this episode, we wanted to concentrate on a topic that has an anniversary coming up. It's the Grimes sisters' murder of 1956. Their bodies were found on January 22nd, 1957. And while Chicago is no stranger to murder, per se, it is the case that most people have come to me and told me that it is when the children of Chicago lost a little part of their innocence, and when parents of children started telling their kids to start being home before the street lights went on. In 1956, 15-year-old Barbara Grimes and her 13-year-old sister Patricia, known as Petey to close friends and family, were living with their mother Loretta Grimes, their older sisters Shirley Wojcik and Teresa Grimes, and their brothers Jimmy and Joey Grimes at 3634 South Damon Avenue in the predominantly blue-collar neighborhood of McKinley Park. Loretta was a single mom, still raising 5 of her 7 children, having been divorced from her husband Joe Grimes for the last 11 years. Barbara was a sophomore at Kelly High School, and Petey was a grade school student at St. Maurice. Petey, although younger, was taller than Barbara and more the outgoing of the two. On December 28, 1956, the girls ate dinner at home and left at approximately 7:30 p.m. in order to see their idol Elvis Presley in the movie Love Me Tender at the Brighton Theater, which used to be at 4611 Archer Avenue. As one would expect, the theater was packed with a mostly female teenage audience, and a close friend of the girls, Dorothy Weiner, later testified that she saw them at the theater but had left before the second feature. The girls were expected to take the Archer Avenue bus, arriving home between 10:30 and 11 p.m. that night. Teresa and Joey were waiting at the bus stop, but the girls never showed up. The family was quick to notify police because it was unlike the girls not to come home when they were supposed to. Initially, the police were not overly concerned and believed the girls were probably out with boyfriends or maybe simply ran away, but their mother Loretta knew better. The girls did not have any boyfriends that she knew of and had never run away before. Besides, they had left with no extra clothes, no extra money, and had left all of the Christmas presents at home, including their prized AM radio. It soon became obvious that the girls were not simply runaways, and even Elvis Presley himself made a radio plea that stated that if the girls were good Elvis fans, they would return home to their mother. Once Elvis became involved, it became national news, and it became a multi-jurisdictional missing persons case, with assistance coming from many of the surrounding suburbs of Chicago. Tips poured in from as far away as Memphis, Tennessee. It seemed that every bus driver, cab driver, or truck driver in the city of Chicago saw 2 girls who looked like the Grimes sisters. It was an overwhelming task for investigators. Unfortunately, on the afternoon of January 22, 1957, one of the biggest missing persons cases in the city of Chicago became one of the biggest murder investigations. A man named Leonard Prescott was driving eastbound on German Church Road in an unincorporated Burr Ridge when he noticed what he believed to be 2 mannequins lying just on the other side of the guardrail on the north side of the road. He went back to the scene with his wife and confirmed that they were the nude bodies of 2 females. They notified the Willow Springs Police Department, who notified the Cook County Sheriff's Office and the Chicago PD. The Grimes family was also notified, and Joe Grimes confirmed the worst. They were the bodies of his daughters, Barbara and Patricia Grimes. Even though the temperature was unusually warm for January, the bodies were still frozen and were transported to the Cook County morgue to thaw before any autopsies could be performed. The girls' funeral took place at St. Maurice Church and the Walschlager Funeral Home directly across the street. The church service was at capacity and Mayor Richard J. Daley attended. The caskets were simple, white, and closed, and had a photo of each girl on top. Mrs. Grimes was heard saying that she was finally with her girls again. The girls were buried at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, very close to an older sister, Leona Frack, who had died after a short illness before the girls. The hunt for a killer was on. The family who owned the D&L restaurant on Madison Street had suspicions about their part-time dishwasher, a guy by the name of Edward Benny Lee Bedwell. They had seen him and another man in the restaurant with two girls who looked like the Grimes sisters, and the Cook County Sheriff's Department picked him up for questioning. The questioning took place in a motel room owned by a sheriff's deputy and lasted for 72 hours. At the end of the questioning, Benny signed a typewritten confession that was prepared for him. The problem was that Benny could not read or write. In the confession, he stated that he and another man had partied with the girls for almost a month, going to movies, drinking at bars, and having consensual sexual relations. Loretta didn't buy the confession for a minute. The depiction of her girls was nothing like them, and she actually sat with Benny's mother, Hazel, at the coroner's inquest, telling her that she did not believe that Hazel's son had killed her girls. The autopsies proved that Benny's confession was false. While the autopsies could not identify a cause of death except for exposure to cold temperatures, it did show that the stomach contents matched what the girls had eaten before they had left for the movies that night, and that they had likely died within 4 hours of leaving their home. Benny was a free man. There were many other suspects brought up, including horseman Silas Jane and Kenneth Hansen, and stories about possible mob involvement, and even theories that their father Joe had committed the crime to cover up some evildoing within the family, but none of those theories panned out. What about this guy named Charles Milquist? Charles Milquist is a name that many followers of the case are not familiar with. Milquist would have been 19 at the time of the murders and was convicted of the 1957 murder of 15-year-old Bonnie Lee Scott of Addison. Once he confessed to the murder, the Grimes investigators were not allowed to speak with him due to actions of his attorney, Robert McDonald. McDonald was a former prosecutor in Cook County with ties to the Giancana mob family. He eventually married murdered mob boss Sam Giancana's daughter, Antoinette. There were many similarities between the Scott murder and the Grimes murder. Age, sex of the victim, no cause of death being determined in either case, the bodies being left nude in a secluded area close to a roadside in close proximity to where the Grimes girls were found. Unexplained marks on Petey's chest that could have been caused by a 3-pronged garden fork that was found in Milquist's car subsequent to the search on the Scott case. Phone numbers of young girls who were neighbors of the Grimes family in Milquist's telephone book. The statements of psychiatrists linking Milquist's personality with that of the possible Grimes murderer. And most damning of all was the phone call that Loretta Grimes received shortly after her girls' bodies were found. The caller said that he had undressed the girls and knew something about the little one that nobody else knew. She crossed her toes when she was scared. He then laughed, hung up the phone. Loretta said that she would never forget that voice. When Bonnie Lee Scott's body was found at 95th and LaGrange Road, and the article appeared in the newspaper, Loretta received another phone call almost 6 months after the previous call, and the caller said that he had committed another perfect crime, that they couldn't pin this one on Benny Bedwell or Barry Cook. He then laughed again before he hung up the phone. Loretta stated publicly that she was 100% sure that the caller was the same person who claimed to have undressed her girls, and that was even before they had the body identified as Bonnie Lee Scott. Milquist was convicted of the murder of Scott and was sentenced to 99 years, and pretty much forgotten about. Unfortunately, he was released from prison after having only served 8 years. He went on to get married, ironically have 2 girls of his own, and passed away in June of 2010 from lung cancer. Loretta died in 1989 at the age of 83 without ever knowing who murdered her girls. She had sent a letter to the investigators asking them to never give up, and that letter still hangs in their office today. Whoever killed Barbara and Patricia Grimes is still a mystery. However, it's widely believed that he did not act alone, and there's a good chance that somebody alive today knows something about what happened that night. We started a Facebook group a couple of years ago. It has about 1,500 members of the family. There's friends of the girls, there's classmates, pallbearers, neighbors, former and current law enforcement. And it's a place where people can share stories about the girls, share theories. We have gotten tips from that page that we forward to the authorities. But ultimately, this case is cold but very still active, and it's still the jurisdiction of the Cook County Sheriff's Department. So if there's anybody out there that can help possibly provide information that can help with this case, we ask that you call the Cook County Sheriff's Department tip line, and that is 708-865-4790. or you can go to cookcountysheriff.com, click on the right side of the page where it says submit tip, and you can put the tip in anonymously. And please, if you do have that information, you can share this video. We really like to see closure for the family. And again, thank you for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe. I don't have one of those fancy subscribe buttons on the screen, but if you kind of look over to your left-hand side, no, the other left, the button right under the video, just hit subscribe there. Thanks.